You're watching the Daily Climate Show on Sky News. Coming up on today's programme, millions of households to pay hundreds of pounds more for their energy bills. But where does this leave the big energy suppliers and the transition to greener sources of fuel? The world's first wind farm co-op, which could provide a model for making green energy at cheaper prices for consumers. And an oil production ship carrying up to 2 million barrels of oil explodes off the coast of Nigeria. Hello and welcome to the UK's only daily climate news show, where we track the changes happening to our world right now and challenge those coming up with the solutions. We start tonight with the impact of today's big announcement on the energy price cap on households and the UK's ambitions to move towards a greener energy supply. While the regulator's decision to raise the cap, making bills more expensive, seems unavoidable given surging gas prices, some critics say that unless the country's dependency on fossil fuels is reduced, people will continue to suffer rising energy bills in the future. So let's remind ourselves of the main announcement today. Well, Ofgem has increased the energy price cap by £693 a year. Now, that's a rise of 54% in the maximum amount an energy company can charge an average customer to £1,971. Now, for customers on prepaid meters, the price cap is rising to £2,017. Well, let's take a look at our data dashboard now, which shows us the UK's current energy makeup. And today you can see there that 35.1% of our energy is coming from gas. We've got 3.1% coming from coal, both of those fossil fuels, of course. And we've got here about 39% coming from renewables. And most of that figure is made up of wind power. Well, our climate change correspondent Hannah Thomas-Peter joins us now. So, Hannah, where does the price cap rise and the government's response to it as well leave the oil and gas industry, Hannah? There had been calls for a windfall tax on the industry, but that didn't happen.
Well, at the moment, it leaves them making lots of money in the UK. Extracting oil and gas from the North Sea is very profitable. These big energy producers are in general in regular contact with the government. They will have been making the argument that a windfall tax would perhaps destabilise them when they are needed to provide an essential service, this huge demand for gas in particular. They will have made the argument that they've only just started recovering from record losses during COVID. And perhaps more importantly, when it comes to the broad strategy around net zero and the transition to renewables, they will have been saying, look, if you tax us now on our profits, we are going to start struggling to invest fully in renewables and the transition to renewables as we had promised. Perhaps the government listened very carefully to those arguments and made its calculations. But it does remain the case that the UK is a very good place for oil and gas companies to do business. That is how it is regarded. There is a generous tax environment. We have reported on Sky News before that many of the big companies operating in the North Sea, in fact, pay negative tax over the last couple of years because of generous allowances for capital expenditure and decommissioning rebates. Campaigners for that reason have long claimed that these big companies are paid to pollute. And it is also the case that these energy price rises that are making these big oil and gas producers so much money are also causing an awful lot of pain now for ordinary consumers.
OK, Hannah, thank you for the moment. Stay there, will you? Because 22 million homes will be affected by this increase in the energy price cap, and those on lower incomes will be the hardest hit. Well, Helen Ann Smith has more on what's driving this rise in the energy price cap.
Your bills could be about to go up by, on average, almost £700 a year. It's because of a rise in the energy price cap of 54%. But what is the energy price cap and how will it impact you? Well, since 2019, Ofgem, the energy regulator, have been limiting the amount that energy companies can charge households for every unit of gas and electricity. It's so people aren't really overcharged for normal things like cooking food, heating homes, or charging up your phones.
Do you worry that you're going to be in a position where sometimes you'll have to be like, I can't put the heating on because it's just too much at the moment?
Well, that's what I do. You know, leave me coat on.
But it's also to make sure that energy companies aren't going out of pocket too. Every 6 months, Ofgem looks at how expensive power has been to buy and then adds on other operating taxes and costs. And that's how the energy price cap is set. One thing though, the cap isn't the maximum you could be charged for your energy use. If you use more, you'll pay more. In essence, it reflects a typical energy use.
I'm on my own, so I've still got the same meeting as everybody else. Say a family. It's got money coming in that I haven't.
And the increase only affects customers on variable gas and electricity tariffs. So why has the cap gone up? The price energy companies are paying for power has gone up for a few reasons. An increase of demand over a very cold winter, an increase in demand from Asia and China, and also to replace what was supposed to be provided by renewable energy sources over what's been a particularly calm and mild summer. But the actual power is not the only thing we're paying for. We're also paying to get that energy into homes and for environmental and social costs as well. So will the price cap go down at all? Well, here's the bad news. The cost of gas that we're particularly reliant on isn't expected to go down anytime soon. The next price cap review is in October, and unfortunately, it's expected to go up again.
So, Hannah, back to you. And as we were hearing there, a huge financial hit then for the general public. So what do you think that could mean for attitudes towards the funding of a green transition?
Well, that is the thing that has been worrying politicians and those in charge of delivering net zero, because the estimation is that it could be around £1.5 trillion of spending between now and 2050. An awful lot of that is going to have to happen in the next 10 to 15 years. Of course, it will deliver huge savings and a cleaner, greener life, but that's also a lot of money. The Treasury hasn't ruled out raising taxes to pay for getting to net zero, but can you imagine doing that in the current environment, given all the costs that we're already bearing, or the general public is already bearing? It hasn't ruled out reducing public spending in order to help with net zero. That's something that they'll be considering on an ongoing basis. And there are schemes available already, loans, grant systems, and so on, support for people to invest in going green, to switch from a gas boiler to buy an electric car, and so on. But it is just the case that the government will not be able to cover the out-of-pocket investment costs for everybody in the UK, and that people are going to have to find the money. And the worry is that they won't be able to do that. There's already a growing group of MPs within the Conservative Party campaigning and making quite a lot of trouble for the government on just that issue. And there is today a warning from the Business and Energy and Industrial Strategy Committee that the government's decarbonisation plan for homes, that's the switch from gas central heating over to electricity-powered heat pumps, is nowhere near in the right place. It needs to be a massive campaign to support people and encourage them to do so, or they warn the government's net zero targets are in jeopardy.
Hannah, thanks very much indeed. Now, an oil production ship capable of carrying up to 2 million barrels of oil has exploded off the coast of Nigeria. The Trinity Spirit, which can process up to 22,000 barrels of oil per day, was situated near Warri in southern Nigeria when it burst into flames. Sky's John Sparks has been following the story.
Huge plumes of billowing black smoke were seen rising from this production facility located off the coast of Delta State in Nigeria. And the production facility, called Trinity Spirit, is big, more than 330 meters long, more than 50 meters wide. And it was designed to pump oil out of the seabed, to store it, and then to offload it. There was an explosion here early in the morning, and there are reports that the vessel has now sunk. There were 10 crew members on board, but we don't know at this stage if there are any casualties. An industry source says the Trinity Spirit had 50,000 barrels of oil on board when the fire took hold, although it was not believed to be pumping oil from the seabed at the time. And if that's correct, it will come as something of a relief. No one wants a repeat of the Deepwater Horizon disaster in the Gulf of Mexico, when an explosion ruptured the opening of the well, or the wellhead. In that case, 4 million barrels of crude flowed into the sea. In Nigeria, I'm afraid that oil spills are nothing new. Thousands of spills have been documented in the oil-rich Delta region, and they've caused widespread environmental damage, destroying the area's mangroves and swamps and depriving local residents of things like clean water. Confusion surrounds the company that owns the Trinity Spirit. It's called Sheba Exploration and Production. Media reports say it had its oil license revoked 2 years ago. But the company still seems to be operating, and in a statement, the chief executive pledged to investigate the cause of the explosion.
Now for some of the day's other climate news. And as we've been hearing, MPs have urged the government to set a clear date for banning the sale of new gas boilers. The Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy Committee says around 29 million homes in the UK need retrofitting with low-carbon heating systems and other energy efficiency measures. The MPs say that government policies to cut emissions from homes are nowhere near the scale needed to reach net zero by 2050. A new study has found that almost all of the UK's forests and woodlands are at risk due to damaging farming and forestry practices. The Soil Association says 99% of plantation forests and 93% of native woodland are not in good ecological condition. They say a move to regenerative forestry is needed, increasing the number of tree species and maximising forests' carbon-storing properties. Every hospital and medical centre in London is in an area the World Health Organization classifies as having toxic air pollution. That's according to the London Atmospheric Emissions Inventory, which found despite areas meeting legal UK air quality limits, they still fail the stricter WHO guidelines. It comes after the mother of a schoolgirl who died from asthma linked to dirty air urged political leaders to tackle air pollution. And a new study has found extreme weather events have accounted for economic losses in Europe of just over £400 billion over the past 40 years. A European Environment Agency briefing says extreme weather events like storms, heat waves and flooding have also caused up to 145,000 deaths. The briefing aims to provide more data-based information about the impact of extreme climate change hazards on human health. Now, while renewable energy sources may be vital to the country's future energy make-up, the current energy crisis shows us just how reliant we still are on polluting fossil fuels. But one company has come up with an idea to help generate a clean source of energy which doesn't cost the consumer in the long run. The world's first co-op wind turbine has been erected in Wales and will begin generating energy for its shareholders in March. Investors will receive a discount on their energy bills for the 25-plus years the turbine generates wattage. It could be the stepping stone in future that consumer-owned green energy models.
People need to have a way to protect themselves against the really, really volatile international energy markets. And by owning your own source of clean, stable priced electricity, it can protect you from the price spikes like we're seeing at the moment. Ripple manages a co-op, so we set up a co-op. People join the co-op, and it's the co-op that owns the wind farm. But we basically manage everything, the whole process for them, so they can just decide how much of the wind farm they want to own, go on our website. We take care of everything from there.
Heat pumps or solar, those are kind of static and attached to your house. So I'm looking to move house in 1 or 2 years. Those kind of investments wouldn't quite make sense, where they stay with a property and I'd potentially lose out on the money that I've invested. If I move house with this wind turbine investment, that discount comes with me. We're seeing huge amounts of new projects going up offshore. I think in the UK, particularly in England, it's really, really difficult to get planning consent for any new wind farm at the moment. So that absolutely has to change, because the UK, onshore wind is the cheapest source of electricity in the UK, and it's absolutely crazy that it's so difficult to get new projects built in England. We think it's the future. We just want to do more and more wind farms, getting thousands and thousands of people being able to own their own source of clean power.
Do stay tuned. Coming up on the Daily Climate Show, I'll be joined by lecturer in international relations at Cardiff University, Jen Allen, and head of analysis at the Energy and Climate Intelligence Unit, Simon Cran-McGrean. And we're going to be discussing what other options the government might have to deal with rising energy prices, and what role should there be for some more imaginative solutions, such as community wind farms. Hello and welcome back to the Daily Climate Show on Sky News. Now we're getting straight to discussing the climate issues of the day now with lecturer in international relations at Cardiff University, Jen Allen, and head of analysis at the Energy and Climate Intelligence Unit, Simon Cran-McGrean. So a very good evening to you. Nice to see you both. So, as you've been hearing about all day, we're all going to see a huge rise in our energy bills in April, over 50% for most people. Now, the Chancellor blamed the UK's reliance on gas, geopolitical tensions and a long winter for rising prices, and has now promised to support households by providing £200 off energy bills to be repaid over 5 years from next year, and a £150 council tax discount for everyone in bands A to D. So is that enough? What else could the government do? So, Jen, what did you make of the government's steps in the light of Ofgem's announcement today? Its immediate priority was try to ease the pain for consumers. Do you think that's the right call?
We do need to ease the pain in the short term, but this is a perfect storm. It's geopolitical tensions, it's high gas prices, coupled with a lot of energy inefficiency. So we need a lot of energy just to heat our homes to a comfortable standard. And we need more than most countries. So couple all those things together, and we have big structural forces, and we have people caught in the middle of it that are just trying to heat their homes. And £200 might help in the fall, but it won't help in the long term if we keep seeing all of these big structural problems at play.
And Simon, what did you make of the response? Because some people have been calling for a windfall tax on oil and gas companies that could then be passed on in discounts to consumers. They were pointing out Shell's big profits today. Their profits went up to nearly $20 billion, for example. Would you have welcomed that move, or would you have worried that that would take away their potential investment into renewables, into greener energy sources?
It's always very complicated to try and work out exactly where the fossil fuel companies will put their money. I think the question of windfall tax, it is an option the government can consider, but really it's just a short-term solution again. The systemic problem, as Jen was saying, is the fact that we use too much gas, and gas is an international commodity traded on a market which are very volatile and open to manipulation. We saw just yesterday, we were expecting gas flows from Russia into Europe, and then mysteriously they stopped. So we're still at the mercy of this manipulation. And so really talking about windfall taxes or other issues around the fossil fuel industry is really just very short term. And by far the best solution is to use less gas and move away from it entirely in the long term.
Would you agree with that, Jen? And what do you make of this idea of a windfall tax? I mean, the Chancellor made it clear he wanted to shield North Sea oil and gas producers for the sake of both energy security and job security, and to allow those companies to continue to invest in the green transition. What do you make of that stance?
I don't think that companies should be earning record profits off the back of the poor. It's really difficult for them probably to try to justify record profits while people are looking at the incredible increase in gas prices that they'll be facing. So a windfall tax probably sends a good message that if they are going to invest in renewables, they're going to have to do it quickly and meaningfully, or face a windfall tax that then can be redistributed to the people that need it most.
And Simon, gas prices are set to stay high for some time, aren't they? I mean, the conditions aren't going to change particularly, and we are still reliant on gas, aren't we, as a kind of transition fuel, if you like, until more renewable energy comes on stream. So do we just have to accept it, that this is the way of the future, that we're going to have higher energy prices for some time to come?
Certainly these high gas prices are going to remain for at least a year, possibly longer. If the wholesale price does fall again later this year, it'll take a while to come through to the retail market, so customers, households and businesses. And we are already seeing evidence that renewables are having an impact in cutting the prices. So gas obviously affects our heating bills when we use it for heating. It also affects our electricity bills. partly because we use it for some of our generation, but partly because the way our market works, the most expensive technology usually sets the price for everyone. So gas being very expensive means that everything is very expensive. However, some renewables that have contracts for difference with the government actually pay back some of the excess money that is being paid to the wholesale market. So this quarter alone, the expectation is that some of the new wind farms are going to be paying back a total of £600 million that will eventually make its way back to consumers. And as bigger and cheaper and more efficient wind farms come online in the coming years, those paybacks will become commonplace, even if the gas price falls again, because those renewables are so cheap.
Very interesting. And I'm glad you talked about wind farms, because we are going to introduce this idea that we've heard about the government solution, but what about some of the more imaginative solutions? And earlier we did hear about a shared ownership of a wind farm. And in Bristol, local communities are investing into solar projects in order to move off grid. So, Simon, do you think an idea like this, a kind of shared ownership of a wind turbine, could take off and give consumers an alternative way of getting their bills down?
It certainly is a very beneficial approach, and there are countries such as Denmark and Germany where community energy has been very, very successful. And not only is it a way of people investing and getting a return, it's a way of them getting cheaper energy from renewables. It also really helps to build a sense of interest and engagement with the whole energy question. And people tend to be more energy efficient, more interested in insulation to bring their bills down, and just generally more welcoming of the transition. So I think community energy really does have a very valuable role potentially.
What do you make of this? I mean, the one issue is it does require people to put a lot of money in up front before they get the benefit, and people are suffering this squeeze on their finances at the moment. So how practical do you think it could be?
It could be that such a community model like this might be a way to get into the energy market that wouldn't be possible otherwise. If you think about putting solar panels on your house, that's a big upfront cost that we can't afford right now. Not a lot of people can, even if you're going to earn that money back over time. So something like this, where you pay a little bit and then you start to see the benefit, that might be possible for a lot of people. And it might sort of demystify energy, like where we wonder where our food comes from. This might help people kind of understand where their energy comes from.
OK, well, we must leave it there for today. But Jen Allen and Simon Cran-McGrean, really interesting to get your views. Thanks very much indeed. So that's it for today, but tomorrow I'll be joined by economist Vicky Price and climate columnist for The Independent, Donegal McCarthy. Thanks for watching. See you next time.